Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about delves, and look, a lot is riding on them for WoW's silent majority. Now, for me, like, dungeons and raids are great. If delves are a total miss, it won't really tank how I play or how many people play. There are no mandatory, like, delves to go and get your soul ash and your soul cinders. That stuff's not at play. There's no mandatory feeling grinding island expeditions to upgrade your Heart of Azeroth. That stuff is good, and I think that ultimately means that delves are not going to torpedo the game. What they mostly represent is an opportunity. If they end up being a miss, that would suck, and that will sting for a large segment of WoW's players. So, in a way, some of those stakes are still high, even though I don't think delves will be able to ruin mine or your gameplay. Dragonflight, I guess, was an expansion that was about building foundations, right? And that's kind of that's the boring bit that you need to do right. With War Within, we see Blizzard trying to make use of that foundation. And I think that's what delves really are, trying to push the game forward. So, I'm going to be talking about my impressions from playing them. We're going to talk about rewards, going to talk about progression, and then the new things that we have learned, because as it turns out, if you like the Mage Tower, I've actually got some good news, via the lovely people who support what we do over at Bellular.games, of course. But over there, our members get our videos ad-free, and as soon as they are made, which is often pretty substantial early access, as well as the Lore Walking podcast, and all of the other perks that are relating to the other channel that we run. And right now, I'm actually cooking up what is next for Warcraft content over at Bellular.games. And I guess the other side is, seriously, you guys are making a difference. It's just helping me focus on doing the best content that we can. So, thank you. With that said, let's talk about some initial impressions from alpha gameplay. And look, I'll admit that my initial feeling was mixed to undecided. The locales and the fantasy of delves are great, and I love the core idea, right? That there's something for what Holly, when we were chatting, described as the mid-core to casual player. That is great. The only issue is that right now, what we can test does not let anything shine here, and that's because difficulty tier 1 and 2 are wholly toothless, so any design intent is basically watered down by things not hitting hard. What I will say, though, is I enjoyed the ones in the Isle of Dorn for what they were. They were a quick shake-up to leveling, taking me into a slightly different experience, doing some sort of different gameplay, and seeing a new place. And that's a real strength of this feature. Every delve, so far anyway, has got a great sense of place. They're often gorgeous, quite rich, and they essentially help to build the zones out and make the world of Warcraft feel a bit more rich. And that certainly is helped by how you even just enter them by going through a mist door, a little bit like going into a boss room in Dark Souls. There's no hard loading screen. So just those elements of implementation I think are really strong. And the good news is, this continued when a new build added the Ringing Deeps into the game and a few of its delves. So, this stuff is a positive that I totally underestimated. I suppose a bit like how right now, in Season 4, I'm gallivanting around the Dragon Isles, and it does actually really feel like an MMO. I'm seeing a populated world, and there's lots of different activities and things going on, full of people. It only really took till the end of the expansion for me to appreciate that. So I suppose, a bit similarly to delves, I think they're a really strong core idea, and what they do is they help further flesh out the world, and I think that's great for essentially the sense of world and the sense of fantasy within World of Warcraft, which is a really important thing for the game. But with that said, let's just talk about some mechanics. So, here's the waterworks. When I went in, I found it was full of poison gas, and I was given an air purifier, one that drains fuel as I move. So you can see the gameplay. You plan your movements, you manage that resource, you dodge enemy abilities with finesse rather than just running to Narnia. And maybe if you're doing this with a team, one person's got the air purifier and you've all got to stay inside that area. I can see the gameplay there. There's a similar mechanic going on with a candlelight in another delve, and then in the mine delve, we were basically saving some earthen and loading them into a minecart. Now, of course, at Tier 2, this stuff was not impactful. At Tier 8, I mean, I certainly hope that they are impactful, and Tier 8, by the way, is the hardest difficulty that pertains to gear, but we'll get to that a little bit later in today's video. What is good, though, is a confirmation of something that I had suspected, and that basically is the delves themselves changing. Now, we haven't actually seen this in alpha, because every week brings a new zone, and therefore the old set of delves are gone, so you can't check in with them, but the way this will work at endgame, according to the developers, is the delve objectives will change week to week. and talking with Nagura, Sean McCann, who is the lead for Delves, he basically gave the example of that mine in the Isle of Dorn, where when you go there the first time on Alpha, you're helping a bunch of miners. But as an example, in another week at endgame, you might find an Arathi soldier who is just in the mine, and maybe you need to burn back the spider webs of the flamethrower for a sort of a different game feel. So that they change week to week is good. He also, by the way, teased a future underwater delve, but thankfully one where we are like running rather than swimming. So who knows? I mean, it's a water level. Some of those can be amazing. Some of them can be spooky. But according to him, it playtested well internally. Obviously, we'll have to test that. Now that you know the basics, let's talk about these at endgame. So there's a total of 11 difficulty tiers for delves. Tier 1 and 2 are for leveling. They're on Alpha. They're total cakewalks. 3 through 11 are endgame, with 4 through 11 unlocking along with Season 1. Now, that season unlock is usually a week or two after the launch of the expansion, and the reason is pretty simple. As Blizzard have said, the gear goes as high as heroic raid level, so basically it's no joke. Interestingly, Sean McCann, speaking to Nagura, said that rewards are actually maxing out at Tier 8 for Delves. Tiers 9, 10, and 11 exist as a hard mode. Now, they've not elaborated any further, like, are there rewards for the hard mode? Why are you going to do it? Is there anything special or unique? But I do like the core idea. If it's a hard mode, they can just scale that difficulty to be way higher, and that kind of means that no matter what content you do in the game, it looks like Delves will at least give you some sort of prestige challenge to chase, if that's what you want to do. Gear-wise then, so the PvP vault track is gone, it's been replaced by world content, and that includes delves. So doing delves and world content will fill up that great vault track, and the item level of rewards appears to depend on what tier of delve that you're doing. Now, the second way to get gear with delves is through resplendent chests and the keys that open them. So here you can see me finishing a delve on one of my alpha characters, and I end up in this treasure room with green and purple chests. The green chest just gets me some gold, some resources, a faction cosmetic currency. These are used for things like various hats, renown items, that kind of thing. Then there are the resplendent chests. These are opened with keys, and those keys are earned through world content. Right now, we do not know exactly what that means. We have not seen keys in the alpha, but there will be a way to get keys. And obviously, that's something they will have to get right. Now, Blizzard limiting the gear rewards by this key system, I think does make a degree of sense, because otherwise you'd feel like you would have to complete every single delve at the highest difficulty you can every single week, and that would be a hell of a lot. This way, at least Blizzard can better control the rewards and they can pace things out more reasonably. Now, does that mean that if you have a few keys and you're progressing through delves, that you'll feel bad using one of your keys in a lower tier delve? Versus if you just did a higher tier delve after you've maybe exhausted all other gear sources that week? You know, is there going to be a degree of metagaming to this system? I mean, I imagine there will be some of that because it's really hard to avoid, and it's not a deal breaker to me, but it certainly is something to think about. I mean, look, metagame brain, it's damaging, but it is a real thing because sometimes it is actually useful. Anyway, I get the big point though. They want delves to complement outdoor world content, not pull a Warlords of Draenor and suck people into an instance where they won't be seen. So the idea is you do your events and your sort of Dragonflight style things, those get you keys, and then you spend the keys in delves for gear with resplendent chests. Now, those keys may remind you of a very fun old debate, like how you needed to earn vessels to enter horrific visions, or how Blizzard initially wanted people to use a consumable for every Torghast run. That would have been lovely. So is that a concern here? Like, I can certainly see a lot of people looking at these keys and thinking, oh no, problem. Personally, while it does depend on how they implement it, I'm not really that put off here. You can do delves whenever you want. The key is just for those resplendent chests, and if you're someone who delves are targeted at as your primary way of progressing in WoW, then you're probably already doing all of that world content that gets you the keys. So personally right now, I'm not particularly worried. Then of course, crests and flight stones, those are a question, but I think we can all imagine how they'll work. There's already a crest cap in the game, so Blizzard wouldn't really need to tie earning crests to keys. So if you just wanted to earn some crests, do some flight stones, and I suppose get that by just doing a bunch of delves, that seems reasonable to me. Anyway, that's how all of that stuff is shaping out, and I think the thing that is the most notable to me is that if this is how you plan to gear up your characters, it is totally additive to the experience. It does appear they will be shipping the same sorts of events that they have shipped with Dragonflight, so it's basically, imagine if Dragonflight was Dragonflight, but you could also do delves. So it does seem like this is an expansion of the game's feature set, rather than one thing being replaced with a new thing. And we know that Blizzard is taking this seriously because they have basically said they're positioning this as a new pillar of WoW content going forward. But that's not it for delves. There was a really interesting thing in the interview with Nagura and Sean McCann, where it turns out they have a 13th delve. The 13th delve is a sort of secret, and basically it's a room. And in that room, there is a boss. The boss hits as hard as is possible, and according to Sean in a recent playtest, nobody defeated it. And that is a hell of a good sign, and he also said that yes, with the 9s through 11s being hard mode only, and I would personally then say also being detached from gear, well, maybe that's another example where Blizzard can just have hard content in the game. And I think that actually does solve a problem, because we get all of this gear from doing content in WoW, right? You know, use your numbers to get an item that lets you do bigger numbers to get another item, and so the treadmill goes. Well, here, this is kind of something to do with the gear that you've earned, right? A tier 11 delve could be totally handing your ass to you, but maybe after a few weeks of raiding, you've actually got the gear to take one of them on. Meaning, after doing the raid and gearing up your character and optimizing things, oh, you've got hard delves to do, and you've got a mage tower style delve. I think that's a really strong thing to add to a season of WoW, and maybe defeating those tier 11s will be a little bit like getting ahead of the curve or Keystone Conqueror, so I think that's actually pretty promising. As it stands then, this is my opinion on delves. Currently in alpha, we have seen them in their least interesting and least gameplay relevant form, where I really would like to see them be harder, and I'm absolutely holding like my final call on this until we can do endgame testing. What I will say is that as explorable areas as POIs in the world, they are done to a very high standard. They're rich, it is fun to just go into them really and just see, oh cool, this is some big dwarven factory or some, you know, funny cave or this water place that apparently playtested really well internally. All of that stuff to me is great. It is more World of Warcraft in the World of Warcraft. That's the sort of thing that should be this game's strength, and really hadn't been for such a long time. So I really like that. And in theory, so much of what is being said about these at the end game does seem really good. And they do seem to be aware of problems. As an example, looking at the Nagura interview, Sean was clear about the problems with Torghast. So if this was Shadowlands testing, I'd be concerned. If this was BFA, I'd be concerned. But right now, where we've been for the last 2 years, I do fundamentally have more trust in this team's ability to execute on designs, but also to take feedback on board, because that's the key thing that had been missing in the past, does appear to be far more healthy right now. So, delves, that's what's up with them. Of course, once endgame testing is a thing, I will be doing a shitload of it, and I'll report back to you then. As it stands then, and as somebody with honestly a really busy schedule, the idea that I can just do like a quick 10-minute thing that's actually properly hard and challenges me within WoW, that's really good. The idea that I could do it solo, or maybe do it with 2 or 3 random people in my guild, depending on who is logged on, that is really good. So I'm personally quite excited about this, but obviously, as it goes, alpha is alpha, do not pre-order based on it. We will see how this shapes up. Let me know then, what do you think about this? And if you struggle to maybe find the time for full raiding or doing a whole bunch of keys, do you think this could lead to you playing WoW more? Because do it right, and I really think that this could be a pretty healthy thing for the game. Anyway, that's it for me. I'll see you next time.